Hello everyone.
In a previous video, we reacted to the difference between Portuguese and Spanish, but it was mostly like from Spain and Portugal compared what they speak in both language. And a lot of you in the comment says that we need now to compare Portugal and Brazil because they both speak Portuguese, but apparently the Portuguese in Brazil is closer to Spanish in Spain than it is to Portuguese. I think that's what you guys told us, right? I also know that like when to spread the land, right? To spread like this, one side went to Spain, one side to Portugal, and it like the language. And Brazil is so huge, it's like half of South America or something.
Yo.
Just one country. So I mean, back then there was not that many countries. So anyway, yes, by a Lang Focus YouTube channel. Let's get started.
Let's go.
Hello everyone,
Okay.
welcome to the Lang Focus channel, and my name is Paul. Today we're going to focus on the two major varieties of Portuguese, real Portuguese and fake Portuguese. Now speakers of both varieties love me because they're sure I just called the other one fake. While still being varieties of the same language, the Portuguese spoken in Brazil and the Portuguese spoken in Portugal are significantly different in terms of pronunciation, vocabulary, and grammar. Brazilians often say it's different.
You know, I have never been to Europe, right? I'm from Montreal, Canada, and we speak French there. And our French is very different from the people in France. I can understand French from France, but people from France, they cannot understand my French. And maybe it's the same thing here. Maybe people in Brazil can understand Portugal in Portuguese, but in Portugal, but Portugal cannot understand Brazil. I don't know. You need to tell me.
Difficult to understand Portuguese people, and Portuguese people often say that Brazilians speak incorrect or broken Portuguese.
That's what they said about us too.
Bem, para mim falar acerca da minha terra natal é assim um pouco um assunto, um bicho de sete cabeças, porque eu sou originário de uma região do norte de Portugal. No entanto, cresci na cidade de Aveiro, que pertence ao centro litoral, e a minha identidade está um pouco dividida entre os dois lugares.
Brasília é a capital do Brasil. É uma cidade moderna inaugurada na década de 1960. Hoje é a terceira maior cidade do país, uma metrópole de mais de 3 milhões de habitantes. A população de Brasília veio de várias regiões, especialmente do Nordeste e do Sudeste, sendo, por esta razão, uma cidade multicultural. Brasília é a síntese do Brasil urbano.
The samples you just heard were of the Brazilian
The Brazil one, I understand some of it. So maybe
Sound like English mix.
it sound. There's some word that I use in Spanish. Maybe I don't know. I feel like it's easier to learn because there's less of a like this that go on with the tonality. It's very more straight. Like
Liense accent of Brasilia and the accent of Lisbon, Portugal. There's a lot of variation within each country as well, but these two accents are more or less representative of the main differences between European Portuguese and Brazilian Portuguese. Even if you don't know any Portuguese, you may have noticed that something was different about the way the two varieties were pronounced. European Portuguese is stress-timed, at least to a large extent. I talked about European Portuguese being a stress-timed language in my video explaining why Portuguese and Russian sound similar. In a stress-timed language, the length of time between stressed syllables remains relatively consistent. In order to fit into that relatively fixed interval between stressed syllables, unstressed syllables tend to become shorter. That results in lots of vowel reduction. In contrast, Brazilian Portuguese is syllable-timed. In syllable-timed languages, each syllable lasts for a more or less equal duration of time.
that's what I said. I said it's more straight, like this, like more straight.
Lots of vowels that are reduced or dropped in European Portuguese are generally pronounced more fully and clearly in Brazilian Portuguese. For example, this word, meaning excellent, in European Portuguese
Excelente.
Excelente.
Excellent.
and in Brazilian Portuguese.
Excelente. Excelente.
Excelente.
Oh, it's very different. It looks like a completely different word.
Another
And,
major difference in
The tone also really different.
Yeah, very different.
pronunciation involves the L sound in either language. At the end of a word or syllable, in European Portuguese it's ul or ul, like a dark L sound. In Brazilian Portuguese, it's
W?
like a w, like a W sound after a vowel. For example, the word for couple.
Casal.
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 The sound-
Oh, casal. Casal. Oh, yeah.
represented by the letter S is also different in some contexts. In European Portuguese, it's sh before a voiceless
Sh.
consonant, even if it's in the following word, and before a pause. In other words, at the end of a word if there's nothing right after it. In most Brazilian accents, it's s before a
S.
voiceless consonant and before a pause. For example, the phrase meaning pretty good.
Bastante bom.
Bastante bom.
Oh, bastante bom.
Bastante bom.
Note that in some Brazilian accents, such as the Carioca accent, the European sound is used. Before a voiced consonant, in European Portuguese it's j. In
Je.
Brazilian Portuguese it's z in most
Je.
accents.
Je, ze.
For example, the word meaning same.
Mesmo.
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 Oh.
Note that between vowels it's z in both European and Brazilian accents. We saw this before in the word.
Casal.
Casal.
The R sound also differs between the two countries, depending on the context it appears in. There's plenty of variation of the R sound within each country too, but I'll try to give the general tendencies. When at the beginning of a word or doubled, in European Portuguese it's r, similar to a French or German R, while in Brazilian Portuguese it's ha, or ha.
Oh.
For example,
Rico.
Rico.
at the
Rico.
Rico.
It's not just that. In Portuguese, the one from Portugal, they never pronounce the end of the word. Like, where's the O? Like, where's the
ha.
O?
For example,
Rico.
See, Rico. The O is so quiet, right? It's like Rico. The O is super quiet.
Rico.
Rico.
at the end of a syllable, it's the same as above in Brazilian Portuguese. In European Portuguese, it's normally an alveolar tap. R. For example,
Retornar.
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 note that between vowels, or after a consonant but before a vowel, it's an alveolar tap in both varieties.
Programa.
Programa.
Another characteristic difference is the pronunciation of D followed
D.
by I. In Portugal, it's pronounced D or
D.
the, usually when between vowels. In Brazilian Portuguese, it's G. For example,
G.
the word for day.
Dia.
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 Gia.
There's a parallel difference in the pronunciation of T followed by I. In Portugal, it's T, though the
T.
vowel may be reduced in unstressed syllables. In Brazil, it's Chi. For
Chi.
example, the word for ant.
Tia.
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 Chia.
The Brazilian sounds j and ch result from palatalization. Palatalization also occurs in de and te when they're unstressed with no accent mark and when they're followed by a in the next syllable. That's because in those cases the letter e actually sounds like the letter I. For example,
Verdade. Teatro.
note that in some areas, such as the northeast of Brazil, this palatalization doesn't occur. The Portuguese varieties of Portugal and Brazil share the vast majority of their vocabulary, but just like British people and North American people use some different vocabulary, so do people from Portugal and Brazil. The words for
Yeah, but they will be they will be able to read though. I mean, they're different. But it's just the talking maybe it's going to be
train.
tricky.
In
Train.
European Portuguese, it's,
Comboio.
but in
Comboio.
Brazilian Portuguese, it's,
Trem.
which
okay.
comes from the English word train.
Yeah, the word, the English word. Yeah, that's why it is.
The words for bus.
Autocarro.
Ônibus.
Autocar.
The words for
ônibus,
catching a lift or hitching a ride.
Boleia.
boleia,
Carona.
carona,
The words for bathroom. In Portugal, it's,
Casa de banho.
casa de
which
banho,
means house of bathing. But in Brazil,
Casa de
it's,
Banheiro.
banheiro.
interestingly, in Portugal, this word actually means lifeguard. The words for toilet.
Sanita.
sanita,
Vaso sanitário.
The words for fruit juice.
Sumo.
sumo, suco,
Breakfast.
Pequeno almoço.
This means little lunch.
Café da manhã.
This
Oh.
means morning coffee. Refrigerator.
Frigorífico.
Geladeira.
In Brazilian Portuguese,
Frigorífico.
is used with the meaning of meat processing plant. I imagine it was originally used to refer to a cold storage facility for meat.
Okay, yeah.
Let's look at a sentence for a second. There's milk and juice in the fridge. In Portugal
Há leite e sumo no frigorífico.
and in Brazil.
Há leite e suco na geladeira.
Okay, it's so different. It's so different. There's at least, well, there's two words that are very different.
In both varieties, word for word, it's there is milk and juice in the fridge.
Yeah.
Aside from the different vocabulary, notice the different pronunciation of the word for milk.
Yeah.
Leite.
Late.
Leite.
Again, we
Leche.
hear the difference in how
Leche.
TE is pronounced when unstressed. The words for cell phone,
Cell phone.
Telemóvel.
celular,
the words for screen, meaning the screen of a TV or computer. In Portugal, it's,
Écran.
which comes from
Écran.
French écran. In Brazil,
Ah.
it's.
tela,
This word also occurs in European Portuguese, but is used for other types of screens or canvases, not screens on electronic devices. The words for three-piece suit are different.
Fato.
Fatto.
terno,
Terno.
The meaning of three-piece suit is unique to Brazilian Portuguese, but this word exists in Portuguese in general with the meaning of trio or set of three. There are quite a few words like that have different meanings in either country. Sometimes their primary meaning is different, and sometimes there's an additional meaning that doesn't exist in the other country.
Camisola.
In Portugal,
Camisola.
this means t-shirt or sweater.
camisola,
In Brazil, it means nightgown or night dress.
Yeah, camisole. It's also same in French.
Some of these words can be a little dangerous.
Puto.
In Portugal, this means boy.
Oh, wait. Puto. Yeah, puto for me. Oh, maybe puta. Right? Maybe I have. Is it Spanish? There's a word. Like, you use puta or puto to say
Puto.
a slang.
In Brazil, one meaning is to be really angry, and another meaning is, well, a male prostitute.
Oh,
Similarly,
okay.
Rapariga.
in Portugal, this means a young lady.
rapariga,
In Brazil, this means a female prostitute. For the meaning of
what?
a young lady in Brazilian Portuguese, the word
menina,
Jesus,
used.
this is tricky when you go to
Propina.
the other country.
in Portugal, this means university tuition fee.
Propina.
propina,
In
A
Brazil,
bribe.
it means a bribe. There are a few differences in grammar between
Really?
European and Brazilian Portuguese.
Yeah.
Second person singular pronouns. European Portuguese uses tu
Tu.
as the familiar second person singular pronoun.
Same in French. Tu is the second one. Like to say you. Tu.
And você as the informal but unfamiliar form, used with people of
Yeah,
similar
vous.
age or status who you don't know very well.
Yeah.
Brazilian Portuguese uses
Você.
você as the informal second person singular pronoun, both familiar and unfamiliar. This is true in the standard form of Brazilian Portuguese and in many dialects, though some dialects retain tu. For example, you sing well in European Portuguese
Tu cantas bem.
Tu
and in
cantas
Brazilian
bem.
Portuguese.
você canta bem,
Você canta bem.
But a kind of pronoun mixing often takes place in Brazilian Portuguese, with você being used as the subject pronoun together with the equivalent of tu as the object pronoun or the possessive. For example, for the phrase you and your son, you might hear this
você e teu filho,
rather than this.
você e seu filho,
However, both of them are used. In the dialects of Brazilian Portuguese that do use tu, the conjugation for você, which is really a third person singular conjugation, is often used.
tu canta bem,
So again,
Tu
this
canta
is a kind of
bem.
mixed form that only occurs in Brazil. Placement of object pronouns. Object pronouns in Portuguese are normally clitics that attach themselves close to the verb. They are sometimes positioned differently in the two varieties. In European Portuguese, they are often enclitic, placed after the verb, and in some cases are mesoclitic, in the middle of the verb. In Brazilian Portuguese, they are generally proclitic,
Before.
meaning before the verb, except in compound tenses in which they come after the auxiliary verb and before the main verb. For example, a sentence meaning he saw me in European Portuguese
Ele viu-me.
and in Brazilian
viu-me.
Portuguese.
ele me viu,
In European Portuguese, mesoclitic object pronouns are used in the future indicative tense and the conditional. In Brazilian Portuguese, this is considered archaic and it's rarely used. For example, the sentence meaning I would help you in European Portuguese
Eu ajudar-te-ia.
and in Brazilian Portuguese.
eu te ajudaria,
Notice how the object pronoun in European Portuguese is placed right between the verb
Yeah.
stem and its inflectional ending. Though this is a formal and literary form. Continuous forms. Though this
Isn't
is
the
a
goal?
formal-
Isn't the goal of the Brazilian one to make it easy, like shorter to pronounce? Like because they put the ia at the end of the ajudaria instead of ajudar, they make it like more like a verb at the end.
and literary form. Continuous forms. Continuous verb forms, like the present continuous, are formed differently. In Brazilian Portuguese, it's
estar,
plus
Está.
the gerund, but in European Portuguese, it's formed with
Estar.
plus a
Está.
plus the infinitive. So take the phrase for I'm speaking. In Brazilian Portuguese, it's,
estou falando,
and in
Estou
European
falando.
Portuguese, it's,
Estou a falar.
from what I understand, This is one difference that really annoys Portuguese speakers from Portugal, who insist that it's terribly incorrect Portuguese.
Estou falando, estou falando, estou falando, estou falando.
Take this sentence. We're learning Portuguese, but it's difficult.
Estamos a aprender português, mas é difícil.
Estamos aprendendo português, mas é difícil.
Estamos aprendendo português, mas é difícil.
First, you can see the difference in the present continuous tense that we
We do that in French in Montreal too. We try to put the word together so that it's less word. It's more like the way that you slang the word over time to make it easier to like less things to learn or to write.
talked about a moment ago.
Estamos a aprender.
Estamos aprendendo.
Aside from that, these sentences are pretty much the same, except for their pronunciation.
Estamos.
Estamos.
In this word, you can hear the difference in the S sounds, sh in European Portuguese and s in Brazilian Portuguese. You can also hear the vowel reduction in the European word, with the first vowel basically dropped.
Estamos.
And notice this word.
Difícil.
Difícil.
In this word, you can hear the Brazilian G sound at the beginning, while in the European word it's
Yeah.
D. You can also hear the Brazilian L as it's pronounced at the end of a word or syllable, like w. European
In French, we say difficile, and it's written almost the same way, but not exactly the same. There's an E at the end, but
Portuguese and Brazilian Portuguese are clearly varieties of the same language, and in terms of grammar and vocabulary, they are the same for the most part. But as you saw earlier, there are some differences that really stand out when you encounter them, especially words that have different meanings in either variety. But the biggest difference lies in the phonology of the two varieties, or their systems of pronunciation. That's probably the thing that often makes it difficult for speakers of one variety to understand the other. But that difference can be overcome by learning about what's different between the two varieties and gaining exposure to the other one. But that's just how it seems to me. What do I know? Let's ask native speakers of Portuguese. The question of the day. For native speakers of European and Brazilian Portuguese, how easy is it for you to understand and communicate with speakers of the other variety and other people? What do you think of the differences between the two varieties? How major do they seem to you?
what do you think?
It can be quite dangerous, like because some of the word is the same, but the meaning is so like what offensive, thing like that.
Yeah, I feel like it's very similar to how in Canada the way we speak French. A lot of the word we try to shorten it or put some word together. I saw some of the Brazilian words. They tried to put the A or the two. They tried to put it together to shorten the word to make it. And even in our dictionary, some of the words that were added to the French dictionary come from where I'm from in Quebec. We created a new word that is shortened that put multiple smaller words together that was acceptable in the dictionary. So, yeah, to everything. Because in French, we are known to, compared to English, we use more words to say the same thing. So it's a harder language. It's a hard language to learn, and we try to shorten it to make it easier. Especially in the day where everyone uses a computer anyway. That historically we write on a piece of paper. It's very different from when you type these days on computer, and everyone on the computer that when they write, they try to write shorter sentence to be understood the same way. So yeah, very interesting video. If there's more video like this we should react to, please let us know in the comment below. Yes, and see you very soon.